Hi folks, this is Ray here, your friendly neighborhood nerd. Today I would like to talk to you about Linux. Linux is a beautiful and wonderful operating system that also supports older PCs, PCs that aren't supported by Windows anymore, or Mac OS X, if the hardware is getting a bit dated. And, the problem might hit you with Windows 11 if you don't have the proper chips. But who cares? We've got Linux, we've got you covered. So there's only one thing that remains. Let's get to it and install it. Follow me. For the virtual machine I'm using to demonstrate, you can do this on every other machine as well, of course. I'm choosing a not too powerful machine. So looking at the RAM, that's just 4 gigs. And the CPUs are 4 CPUs, and as a disk, we're going for 20 gigs. That's not much. I mean, compared with your Windows installation, this is really not a lot. So let's get to it and boot it up. In case you've watched my previous video, you don't need to waste a full USB thumb drive for your installation. You can also run Ventoy. I'll link that for you. And we'll use the normal install, not the graphical one. Bear with me, I don't dig the fancy graphical installer because that's just a big waste of resources. So as language, of course, we'll take English. The territory, in my case, it's in Europe. There we go. And as the locales, I'm gonna take the United States. You can choose whatever rocks your boat, but yeah, I really dig the English, the US English settings because I'm used to them. And there's nothing worse to me than a translation done wrong. Just thinking of the infamous no space left on device, which they botched up in German at some point. My key map is German, so let's choose that and we're good to go. Now let's have a look at what we get. Just booting, loading up the modules. Everything is pretty dandy. And it's detecting network, of course. So, how do I get online? Because we're doing a net installation, which means it's an online installation. We're fetching the most recent packages. I'm gonna call my machine Debian as they offer here, which is, legit for a virtual machine, but you can call it anything you want. I even had a computer that I called Bob, so no harm in doing that. For the domain name, well, that can be anything. And I'm choosing my internal domain I'm running, which is stargazer.systems. So yeah, whatever rocks your boat there as well. Now, the important part is the root user. The root user is your administrator. This user can do all and anything on the computer, so make sure you choose a good password. I'll just put one in here, and it, allows us to verify that. There you go. And now it asks us to, have a real user there. Why would that be important? Well, on Linux, you usually have an everyday user and you've got the administrator. This is for, the average, the normal everyday user doesn't need all the permissions. So I'm gonna just hit my name here. And use my account name and give myself a password. There we go. And now it's syncing the time. Having the NTP protocol makes it easier, so everything's fine. So for partitioning the disk, I usually use guided. In our case, we'll just do the entire disk and all files in one partition. And now we can fuck it up. Perfect. About file systems. This is very important. First things is you need a root mount point, which is /. This is the, you don't have drive letters in Linux as you have in Windows. So imagine this as the root of your hard disk. Like in Windows, it would be C. So file systems we can use, there are a couple of to choose from. What I'd say is ext4 is a pretty, all-around file system. BTRFS is the new kid on the block, which is kind of cool because you can do snapshots. XFS is pretty nice for if you don't have a power outage. And that's pretty much all you want to choose. The FAT file system, this is basically the MS-DOS file systems that you don't want to mess around because they lack permissions. X2 and 3 are just older versions of X4. So X2 is basically X3 without the journal and so on and so on. So I'm gonna take XFS because it fits my purpose. And I'm done setting up the partition. For swap, you usually want to use a bit more than just 1 gig, but that's fine. Usually a rule of thumb is twice the RAM you have, so it can swap out. But this machine won't swap much anyways, so let's just finish and write changes to disk. So it's retrieving the packages from the, from the repository and unpacking them on the system. So that's the beauty about it. And it allows us to choose which software sets we're gonna hit. So that's gonna be one of the next steps. And this is where my minimalism comes into play. I really don't want to use sets for one big reason. I want to choose what's on my box. That's the beauty of Linux, because there is this core that you need, and then there's that whole lot of optional stuff that we're... do we have another media, like another CD? No, we don't have that. And that's where we are picking our mirror, which should be the closest to your location to give you a decent bandwidth. In case you have a proxy setup, you can implement it here, with the host port and stuff. It's written down there nicely, but most of you won't, so we just hit enter. So it's searching the mirror, getting all the shiny and new packages, which is cool. New package manager, everything installing. That's great. Love it. And what we did so far is really going the next finish route. So it is not scary. So why not try it out? So while this is installing, let's talk a bit about security. A root user is the most important user on your machine, so you really don't want to mess that up. On the other hand, the normal user, they don't have permission to do software installation. They can't really fuck up things on your computer. So normal work always happens as your user. Root is only for system maintenance. So it's a quick install. You see it even on my crappy line. So what we have here is just everything unpacked nicely, and this is a very important question here. Debian runs a package survey, which means what do you have installed in your system? Do you want to participate and give away some data? I usually tend to say no on such things, and the good thing here, it is defaulting to no. So we can just hit enter, which is really nice. And this is now the software packages. I usually uncheck everything and just use the SSH server, because we'll be managing the system using SSH. It's much easier for me to, be able to copy and paste stuff. We'll get to that later. Now it's about 56 packages being installed, and I'll cut that short for you. There we go. Now it's installing the bootloader, and the bootloader is what the BIOS kicks off. So the boot mechanism says the BIOS looks at the disk at the first sectors, and there's gonna be some bootloader, and this boots up the operating system. So yes, we're gonna install it in our primary drive, and we just say yes here and choose the proper disk. I have to say, I love it how simple they really made it. And it's really a miracle how many people are afraid of Linux. And I'm gonna change that. I'm working on that with you. And there we go. We are finished. And it wouldn't be me if I wouldn't put in some bonus content here, wouldn't I? So let's get to it. So on Debian, the Linux kernel can be a bit dated, and I wanted to change that. The long story short is it was Debian Buster, which is Debian 10, that didn't support the trim command, how to handle SSD disks correctly. So what I wanted to do is install a newer kernel. On Debian, it can be a pain in the ass, so I packaged them for you on Package Cloud. They are hosting my packages, and as I'm an open source project, I really benefit from that. So that's a good thing. So my kernels, the configs, you can get them from GitHub, or you can just install them from this repository, and that's what we'll do. Our login screen is here, and disregard those two error messages. This is just the virtual graphics card acting up. So I'm gonna log in here as my user, and I'm gonna install curl. apt install curl. Curl is basically a downloader, which does the trick for me pretty well. And we will launch the installer script from Package Cloud. So this is curl -s https packagecloud.io /install repositories Debian kernels Buster and script.deep.sh, and we pipe that through bash. We don't need the sudo here as we are root, and so it will install some packages that it needs to correctly fetch the packages, and that should work. That should do the trick. And as you see in the background, it's got a pretty recent kernel. If you want to check the most recent kernel, that's kernel.org. This is where all the drivers are in there. At the point of making this video, we are on 5.14.8, which is exactly what we have in my repository. So we can do this. apt install, and let's use the vanilla kernel, which is basically the Debian config on newer sources. So this should run, if you could boot and install, it should definitely run on your machine. It's not vanilla sources. I'm such a Gentoo user. It's vanilla kernel. Sorry for that. It's all with a Gentoo where you compile everything from source, but that's a topic for a different video. So we're downloading the kernel now, and as you see, it was just a breathe, and you've got a newer operating system core, which means newer hardware is supported, like the Ryzen or the new AMD chipsets. Some bugs are fixed, and this is usually a good thing. So yeah, why not giving it a shot? Links are down in the description, and as you see, it's being installed on the hard disk, and we just need to reboot. And let's see. If something goes wrong, you can always get back to the advanced options on the grub, and this is where you can choose which kernel to boot from. 5.10 is a long-term supported, or you can use my shiny new kernel, which is a 5.14.8 at the point of making this video. So let's start the new kernel, and it's boom, done. When we log back in, you see it Linux Debian 5.14.8. That's the newest kernel at this point. So thanks for watching, and this is basically where we can shut down the machine and think of the next video. As you see, this new kernel fixed the error message on the graphics card, so, well, that's why we do it. So please like, subscribe, or comment on this video, and I will pick up the comments personally and make videos with those questions if you ask them. If you want to catch me live, I'm on Twitch, 5 p.m. Usually Central European time, on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and even Sundays. So, well, links are all in the description, and thanks for watching. Ray signing off.